Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World episode 118. I'm your host John Jordan and very pleased joining me today is Oliver Loeffler. How's it going, Ollie?
Good, good. Thanks for having me. Really
No, no,
excited to be here.
absolute pleasure. So we're going to be talking in the main about Angry Dynamite Labs, which is your current project. But before we dive into all those details, maybe a bit of background about yourself and what you've been up to over the last few years in the gaming space, and then how you made the leap to blockchain. So take it away.
Yeah, right, cool. Yeah, so I was always a gamer since I was a kid. Basically, played like all the strategy games back then, Command and Conquer, Anno, all Age of Empires, and so on. So I was always very deep into gaming, and then was quite amazed by computers as well. That's why I studied computer science later on, and switched then to mobile gaming. And at some point, a friend of mine asked me, hey, do you want to develop mobile games? And I thought like, okay, I'm a gamer, but am I a developer? But I wasn't sure, but I thought
Mm.
like, hey, it's interesting. Let's just try it out. And so I started with Janosch Daniel, Colibri Games. Back then it was called Fluffy Fairy Games. Basically out of university. There's a funny story behind the name as well. We can go a little bit deeper later. But yeah, started that out of like a student's apartment in Karlsruhe in southern part of Germany, and yeah, just started developing a game which wasn't very successful. We developed quite a long time on it and did a lot of
Mm-hmm.
mistake, I guess. But then at some point we just said like, okay, let's not focus on it. Let's build something new. And there we basically had a lot of learnings and we're building then Idle Miner Tycoon.
Mm.
And Idle Miner Tycoon is a mobile free-to-play game. It's basically you work on building up a mining empire and kind of yeah, getting more mines, more workers, and so on and so forth. And that was really successful, actually so successful that we could bootstrap the whole company out of the success of the game.
Mm.
And yeah, so we did that. At some point, we could kind of get a real office. We were hiring first people in a student's apartment, then get a real office in Karlsruhe, later moved to Berlin in 2018, and then massively scaled the company. In the end, we were around 120 people working on Idle Miner Tycoon and other games, mostly focused on the idle genre, and then kind of sold
Mm.
the company to Ubisoft in 2020. And stayed there a little bit longer until May last year, and then we as founders left and decided to kind of pool our money from the exit together and start investing into startups and other companies and try to help them succeed. So that's basically my background in the Web 2 world.
Mm.
And then I switched over going into the Web 3 side because like after we left Colibri Games, last year, I was having some more time, and so I looked around what's happening in the world, and
Mm.
of course there was the big NFT and Web3 hype, especially
Mm.
yeah, in the beginning of 2021, and so I was digging a lot into it, reading, listening to podcasts, and was quite amazed by like how many things are going on and how much potential is there to disrupt multiple industries. So of course there were
Mm.
the DeFi things going on, NFTs, gaming, and of course I looked at gaming. I basically started with Axie Infinity, paid $1,000 just to buy three Axies in order to play the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Played it for 2 hours. Unfortunately, I didn't sell the Axies afterwards. No, they're worthless. But it was a quite interesting experience, like how Axie and then also the other play to earn games kind of focus on creating new incentives for the
Mm.
players and also utilizing the blockchain in a way to kind of have this true ownership aspect of the assets and that you can actually resell them at a later point and so on and so forth. But I also thought there were like some problems to it. I think, of course, later it kind of showed that there were like a lot
Mm.
of economic crashes, so it wasn't really sustainable yet. I think for a lot of people it wasn't really fun, and but I still saw a lot of opportunities, and that's why I decided, hey, nobody's working on this, or at least I didn't see it.
Mm.
Nobody is really working on this. I should get my hands on this, and then decided to start Angry Dynamites Lab and focus on an Web3 game. I distance myself from the term play to earn. I rather
Mm,
call it Web3 game, because I think like I want to really put in the fun aspect into the Web3 world, or Web3 games, and therefore create games that are fun and really utilizing the blockchain in order to build new innovative game ideas.
mm. Cool, good for history, and it's sort of interesting. Going back to sort of Calibri games, that the timing was right. That was exactly the right time when sort of idle games sort of started coming out. And I guess I wouldn't want to overstretch the analogy, but having been working in the mobile space myself, then it was sort of interesting that those sort of games came along, and there was a definite sort of attitude to some people. Whereas this isn't a game. I sort of I don't do anything really. I sort of come and collect rewards, and then I go away again, and then I come back and collect rewards. And so from a certain sort of traditional gaming background, it was like sort of, well, where's the fun? But clearly, the idle genre was absolutely right for mobile, where basically you weren't didn't have to play the game. You just came back every so often and made strategic decisions about your resources. And obviously, you know much better than me how big that came as a genre. And I guess to some degree, we had that a little bit, with sort of the reaction to I guess traditional gamers about Web3, that sort of like, where's the fun, where's the game, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah. But
right.
it's a good analogy.
Yeah.
But as a gamer, was it immediately sort of obvious to you when you're looking around, sort of blockchain and NFTs, that you could just make? Was it very obvious in your head? These are sort of the games I think we could make with this sort of stuff, or did you have to spend a bit of time sort of thinking more deeply about what you wanted to do
Yeah.
with it? Because
Yeah, so it was more like an automatic thing. So I was
yeah,
kind of, yeah, looking around in the games, and like I guess once you become a game developer, you always start analyzing games when you
yeah,
start playing them. So I
yeah.
was like kind of thinking a lot about things. Okay, this mechanic is cool. This is not so cool. There's why they're not doing this and that. And then lot of thoughts at some point were running through my head, and then I decided, hey, to write them down, structure them, and then kind of the idea of Angry Dynamites Lab sparked. So I think there's a huge value proposition for the end users and the
Mm,
players. If you compare it to Web 2, I guess you can build most of the games in Web 2 also in Web 3 or kind of genres. Um, but then the Web3 layer kind of adds new advantages for the players. So kind of with the ownership aspect, with the interoperability, not everything is kind of only kind of in a prison or walled garden in these game economies like in Web 2. And that adds a lot of positive things for gamers.
mm,
And as soon as there are similar good games in Web 3 as in Web 2, Web3 games have like kind of more advantages for the players. So why shouldn't they go then to Web3? And that's what kept me thinking in my head. Okay, if we can build games in Web3 which are actually fun, which are high quality, which can compete with Web2 games, plus
mm,
adding all the other things, I think it's an obvious thing that players will at some point decide to go to Web3, and that's where I see the huge potential. And I know that there's a lot of talent coming into Web3 now, a lot of successful Web2 entrepreneurs, either kind of starting new things, pivoting their whole companies, and so on. So the good people are actually seeing this as well. And I think now in the next 12 to 18 months, or maybe a little bit longer, don't know how when, but I'm pretty sure that at some point the Web3 gaming side will become way bigger.
yeah, yeah, good. Okay, let's talk a bit more detail then about Angry Dynamite Lab. So, why, you've looked at lots of different games, played lots of different games. How did it coalesce down to this project? And maybe a good starting point would be to explain what what it actually is.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So some things I wanted to pick up is like
Mm,
the first thing was like of course the fun
yeah.
things. I wanted to kind of create a game experience which are fun. The Web2 gaming market is massive, 200
Mm,
billion each
mm,
year, which players spend just for having fun. So I wanted to focus on fun. Second is like the social aspect. I played a lot of games. I think a lot of games in Web3 were like basically trading card games where you play one versus one against each other. But I think like we have such an amazing community in Web3 and such engaged, energetic, and are really like helpful. So why not focus a lot on the community first? Like work with the community to build a game, but then also unite the community inside the game itself. So making a social game, a co-op game, basically what I wanted to do. And then I wanted to really kind of pick up this interoperability aspect. I think a lot of people are talking, hey, blockchain, you have interoperability, you can use assets and so on, but I didn't see a lot of games actually doing that. They still kind of created their own kind of walled gardens. And I thought like, hey, why not pick this up and create like win-win situations for us as a developer, but also for the other projects.
Mm.
And these are the three things I wanted to focus on. So came up with Angry Dynamites Lab, and yeah, I can explain the game in a high level idea. So what I thought like additionally is like that we have the metaverses and we have DeFi and so on and so forth, but we don't have an economy in between.
Mm.
So I think like if the metaverse wants to mimic the real world in a digital way, then they have like land plots, they have fashion, they have houses, everything, but you all create them with a button click. So when you mint, you click and you pay ETH, and then it's
Mm.
basically created. But in the real world, there you need a lot of resources in order to build a house or to create a fashion object or something, a shoe or something like that. And I wanted to basically create this meta economy around it. So, and I think the best way to do is by creating cool games which are also fun. And yeah, so the whole idea behind Angry Dynamites Lab is that the story is kind of that an asteroid was crashing into Earth, wiping out the human race, but then the dinos are reborn. So
Mm.
basically the other way around than it was in 200 million years ago. And then these dinos are now in this new world. They are a little bit clumsy. They're not so smart. They have small brains. So the players need to help them in order to survive in this new world or even escape it. So that's the main story. And now you can basically mint some dinos as NFTs. So these dinos have one of four elements. So there's the fire dynamites, the water, the wind, and the earth dinos, and they produce basically these elemental tokens. And all of these elemental tokens you can craft, transform, or merge like multiple other tokens or resources. So for example, you can combine a fire token and a water token to a steam token. You can transform multiple fire tokens into an energy token. You can use an energy in the steam token to build hydrogen, and so on and so forth. So you can build a
Mm.
endless chains of production lines. And if some of you maybe know Factorio as an example, there you basically also build up your mega factory where you can build a lot of these production lines and build like more resources. And I wanted to pick this mechanic up in order to integrate it in a Web3 game experience. And yeah, then in the end, you have like this co-op aspect where people need to build up certain objects together in order to help the dinos survive. So it could be
Mm.
a rocket, for example, that they need to escape Earth. And then these objects need a lot of resources, actually so many that one single player can't build it up on their own. So
Mm.
people need to work together to build them up. And yeah, then basically once completed, the whole community and some individual players kind of benefit from completing an object. And that's basically the very core idea. Later, I want to establish more like social features, which also mimicking a little bit more the real world. For example, there's there could be guilds like kind of
Mm.
focusing on certain production lines. So if you look in the Web2 econ or like kind of the real world economies, you have basically companies focusing on mining raw materials, companies on focusing kind of building up transistors, companies focusing on buying these transistors and building computer chips and so on and so forth. So
Mm.
there's also not one single player who does everything. So I want like people to organize in guilds or clans or companies inside the game and focus on producing certain goods, um, basically more cheaper than others could, and then kind of buying
Mm.
input resources from other players and so on. So that's kind of the high level idea, what I want to do with it. And maybe two more things which become quite interesting for, especially with Web3, is like first that every of these resources are tokens on a blockchain. They're freely tradable, so
Mm.
you can trade fire against water tokens if you don't have enough, and so on and so forth. And the prices between them are varying based on supply and demand. So you have a
Mhm.
more kind of real world economy simulation than you would have in Web 2, because their game designer decides basically,
Yeah.
hey, this is that and this. And the second thing is like that, talking about interoperability, I also see a lot of NFT projects, a lot of blue chip tokens basically generated their fungible tokens. Let's say the apes can generate the ape coins, the cyberkongs, the banana token, and so on and so forth. And all of them are looking for utility now. So they have huge communities because they kind of, yeah, built that up during the hype cycle and so on and so forth. But now people are demanding, they want to do something with their profile pictures. And that's why I created the tokens. But now, are they doing with the tokens? So some are trying to build their own kind of game experiences. Of course, like also the Yuga Labs building this huge metaverse and so on and so forth. But a lot of them are also not game developers. And we can now, as game developers, pick up these tokens and say like, hey, we give you instant utility. And therefore, we kind of wanted you kind of advertise our game in your communities. So this will create win-win situations for both parties. And how we want to do it is basically that you have these fungible tokens as input resources. So for example, you can combine them with our native tokens. Let's say a banana token with a fire token kind of can be combined to a banana pie or something like that, or can become quite creative here. And that's why what I think is super interesting. Therefore, we want to integrate multiple projects which kind of act as also sources in our economy.
Very cool. Good. And at the moment, I mean, you've just given there the very sort of the big roadmap. I don't know how long that's going to take. And we're sort of, I guess, at the starting point of that, aren't we? So at the moment, we've got 500 Fire Dinos live on Ethereum at the moment. So they've been there for a few months now, and every minute, over a period of time, they're creating this fire token. So for people who own the fire angry dinos, they're already creating this fire. The next big thing that's happening, probably about the time this podcast comes out, is the water dinos are being released. So that's sort of the big thing this week.
Right.
And how have you seen that going? Because I guess when you started out, it's pretty. You're starting out. No one really, I guess, knows who you are. 500 NFTs, not that much. But now, in the months, since that, the price of the fire dinos has gone up quite a bit. So I guess you're getting a bit more profile, and the community's growing. So are you sort of happy where you are with the water mint? Because it's always a bit nervous, isn't it, for projects when you're doing a mint? You're never quite sure what's going to happen. So,
yeah, right. Yeah.
How are you feeling?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Always like a little bit nervous, a little bit excited to see how it goes. But I think like what we achieved, especially in the last few weeks, where we did a lot of like activities around Angry Dynomites Lab and collaboration and partnerships with other projects. I think our community was growing enormously. So our goal was basically with the Fire Dinos, which is a very small collection of 500 NFTs, to build up a core community first, not too big. But like people who are actually super engaged with the project, which are liking the idea. We didn't create a lot of hype. We're just telling, hey, this is our idea. And of course we spread the word. And so we had around, like, I think 2K Twitter follower or only 1.5K Discord members when we sold out the collection, but we're still selling out in basically, I think 6-7 minutes or so. Although it was already a bear market. And we got in really cool holders from OG communities, like some XT OGs, cyberkongs, and some founders of other Web3 gaming projects and so on. And I think like these are the people who can really help us and also like kind of spread the word about the project. And now that we are launching the next collection, which is a little bit bigger with 1,500 NFTs, we also did a lot more kind of collaborations with these communities, trying to spread the word, trying to talk about like our roadmap, our vision, where we want to go, and that worked out pretty well. So now we are, I think, almost 13K Twitter followers and 5K Discord members in a time frame of only a few weeks. And the community is still super active. We built a small mini game where people can win a lawless spots and work together. And so it's kind of mimicking a little bit like what we want to do in the real world and in the real game. but in a very small mini game that's super exciting for a lot of these players. And yeah, I think like therefore I'm looking looks quite good, and I hope we'll have a good mint on Thursday, and yeah, quite excited for it.
And then is that at the stage when now you have, on Thursday you're going to have, two elements out there. So the fire tokens and the water tokens being produced. Will that be the stage where we can start mixing, or are we going to have to wait for more of for all 4 dinos to be released?
No, right. So we wanted to get out the second collection actually to have these 2 tokens live that we
Yeah.
can start mixing. But of course, it's not developed yet. So what we are gonna do is like that we are doing now this mint on Thursday, and after that we'll do full focus to build an MVP version as fast as possible, to get that out and get the first players and feedback. So we don't want to develop for years now in a
No.
game which we don't know which is successful or not. So actually rather like 2, 3 months or something like that, and try to get it out as fast as possible. Won't be a very big game with a lot of content,
No.
but like a first idea where people really can see like, okay, this is fun, I like it, that's my feedback, and we really want to work with this community together, which I think is so valuable in order to build a really cool game experience together with the community. And so we will do them and work on the game, and then probably release from there on the other collections at some later stages.
And I think that's, why I've been interested in the project, and more generally, I'm interested in these sort of more sort of on-chain sort of projects where people might say sort of what's the game, but you're sort of starting from a very low level. You're sort of building out these, the most primitive sort of game assets that you can do, and if you can sort of get people to sort of coalesce and build community around those, then who knows, in 5 years' time, you could be building AAA Unreal Engine Godzilla games or something. I mean,
Yeah.
that could be where you go, but it's sort of interesting that I think it'd be almost impossible with sort of Web 2 games to build in this way, where you sort of have a vision of where you want to go, but it's not not quite sure what that's going to visually look like or what those experiences might be like, because that's sort of secondary to the building process. I think that's really the fascinating bit, when you're sort of
Yeah,
starting from the lowest level you can sort of build a game from, and you've
yeah,
got the community
yeah.
involved in that straight away.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I think that's so cool to have like this community already so engaged. So
Mm.
already right now we people are reading out our white paper where we kind of laid out what's our idea, and they're
Mm.
giving a lot of very valuable feedback, and we changed certain things already,
Okay.
although we
Mm.
didn't start developing the game itself,
Yeah.
because of the feedback we got. And that's so super cool. And I therefore really want to kind of ship something fast, it like build on this primitives like
Mm.
slowly, and then kind of continue, and then if we ship something iteratively, we're getting better every time, we're gonna end up building a really good and great game over time with the help of the community, and also not with the super high risk of building something for two
Mm.
years maybe, releasing it and seeing, hey, the community doesn't like it. So
Yeah.
that's how we can build it up, and we can build it up slowly. We don't have these hype cycles, which a lot of projects are going through, building up a lot of hype. Then there's a release, everyone
Mm.
is disappointed, everything goes down,
Yes.
everyone leaves, and then the project is dead. So we rather want to do this more kind of steady, sustainable way with like maybe smaller up and downs in between. I think that's always what happens, but in the long run, it should kind of grow steadily over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to your point out, I mean, you're a pretty sort of tiny team working on it at the moment, aren't you? I don't know how many you are, but it's sort of like a handful of people really at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, so we started hiring recently. We already hired our first full-time employee who's starting, Agnes, who kind of works for community growth
Mm.
and management. I think especially during the time where we need to focus on the mint, that's very
Yeah.
time consuming, and therefore we added some more people, or like Agnes to it. We also hired another game developer who will
Okay.
start in December, and we are still looking to expand the team, but also don't want to grow it too big right now. We
Mm.
rather want to have a high-skilled small team where we can be this agile and trying to
Yeah.
get something out as fast as possible, learn from it. And once we have something where we
Mm.
kind of see like, okay, this has really like potential, the players are liking it, they have fun with it, then we kind of go out there and kind of scale up the team, and yeah, adding more and more resources to it.
Mm-hmm. And again, banging on all the time about sort of holistic an approach to things. I mean, that's sort of how, I mean, when you guys started out as 4 students at university building mobile games in your bedroom, I mean, that's as holistic as you go, because you're basically doing it for sort of love and not getting paid anything at all, but without. That's the way you can sort of spend time working on a game that you decide, well, that's not very good, let's build another one. And then once you've got the foundations in place, that's when you end up with a 120 strong company. And I think that's maybe one of the issues with lots of the Web3 people at the moment is because they've been able to raise sort of a ton of money from an NFT sort of launch or whatever, or get investment in, they sort of have the vision and they get the money for that, and then they have to go away for like a year or 2 years to try and build it. And there's just this big gap, and the community doesn't know what's going on, and the community can't really be engaged because these people are sort of building these very traditional, big game systems that need, tons of art and 3D and animation and rigging and all this, which is actually not what games are about.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I see it the same, and I think like why are not so many other gaming studios trying to kind of launch something as fast as possible and work with the community? I don't understand it. For me, it's just like so obvious. You have such a big asset with like this community, and there are really good people in there. There are some people in there who are developers. There's some people who are also game designers, and so on and so forth. And they basically give you this feedback for free because they like the project so much, and they're actually also like to some degree in the same boat as you are. They're riding the same wave, right? They own some assets, some NFTs, and so on, and they're part of it, and so. The more successful we become, the more happier they are also, and that's why they are really like kind of more engaged with you as a game developer. They really want to use that.
But I guess it is. I mean, the problem I suppose is if the moment if you say what is Angry Dynomites as a game, you haven't got an easy answer like it's a first-person shooter, or it's a turn-based strategy, or it's a flight sim, because that's so you can kind of see why other people do go down this more traditional route of saying we're going to build a first-person shooter with NFTs, because everyone sort of Quake with NFTs, that'd be cool. Whereas I think the interesting sort of games are not the only interesting games on blockchain, but I think the most interesting ones are ones where it is sort of an idea and where can we take it. But then I guess the counter thing would be you probably wouldn't have got to this point if you didn't have a track record of building a successful games company, because if you were just a student out of university saying you're going to build it, people go, well, what does he know? So I can see why people have gone down this more traditional sort of route to Web3 games. But
yeah, I think like in the end we also need to be quite innovative here. There's a totally new space and a totally new platform. We need to figure out so many things still, and I also think like some projects are focusing more on this play to earn aspect. Some projects focusing more on Web2 and putting some games on top of it. Some NFTs on top of it, but I think the big kind of advantages or kind of new ways is when you combine both worlds, like kind of get the best out of the tokenomics and the economy side of things and combine it with established Web2 game mechanics in order to create something new. And I think that's what I want to focus on, and that's why I think there's the biggest potential, and I think that can create games which are completely new, which are kind of having new incentives and new fun gameplay mechanics that wouldn't exist in the Web 2 world.
Cool, good, excellent stuff. Well, thank you very much for that introduction. I won't go on anymore because I'm definitely going to ask you to come back on the podcast in a few months' time when other things have been built up, because I'm just really personally very interested in what you're doing. So we won't overstay our welcome this time, but. Ollie, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, and good luck on Thursday.
Thank you very much as well.
And thank you for watching, listening to the podcast, however you're consuming it. Every episode, we're talking to people who are building out this fantastic new sector of gaming. I think people. I'm really interested by people who are building these sort of very, very low level sort of primitives, like Ollie is. There's obviously space for other people doing the more traditional sort of Web3 stuff as well. So I'm not bothered one way or the other. I think all of it's fascinating. So please subscribe and find out what's happening in the world of blockchain games. Come back next time.